Following the congressional hearing today, November 13th, where they were talking about UAP and NHI, there was a report released about Immaculate Constellation. This was a report that was written up in, I think it's called Public, by Michael Shellenberger, and he has a whistleblower that named the reverse engineering program for the first time, and it is called Immaculate Constellation. This is part two. We're going to read the second page, which was posted on Michael Shellenberger's Twitter or X, and we're going to go ahead and read what else. What else? This is, again, my first time reading through it. I don't know if anybody else finds this so interesting that they're going to spend the time to read every single piece of it, but I absolutely will. There's a couple other reports that I want to read as well that came out today and also got admitted to the congressional record. But let's go ahead and continue with part two of Immaculate Constellation. Written by the whistleblower that came forward. The intelligence within the Immaculate Constellation program primarily consists of high-quality imagery, intelligence, IMENT, and collateral measurement and signatures intelligence, MASINT, of UAPs and RVs, within Earth's atmosphere. 1 second. Let's talk about UAP is unidentified anomalous phenomena, but ARV and RV, that's a reproduced vehicle. That means that a UFO went down, it was retrieved by Immaculate Constellation or another program like it. They put scientists in there to strip it apart and try to figure out how it works. And once they do that, they try to rebuild or build. They try to rebuild the same thing. They try to build a UFO of their own. And if they are able to do so, they call that a reproduction vehicle. ARV, I'm not exactly sure what the A stands for. It's just kind of slipping my mind right now. So within Earth's atmosphere. The collection platforms involved are a blend of tasked and untasked capabilities in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, military and civilian aviation altitudes, and maritime environments. Immaculate Constellation pays particular attention to anomalous aerospace platforms that have been developed through the study or acquisition of technologies of unknown origin by foreign nations or unknown entities. UAP and ARV-RV signatures are preferred operating areas are known to the program. Weird English. Enabling a degree of strategic awareness and warning. Finally, Immaculate Constellation shows that UAP and ARV-RVs are operating around the globe, often in close proximity to sensitive foreign assets and locations. The categorization of Immaculate Constellation as a parent USAP with various childs SAP under its umbrella indicates a high level of compartmentalization and secrecy. In effect, Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAP and ARV activities detected by tasked and untasked collection platforms. Sophisticated internal information security controls are a major part of Immaculate Constellation program, which enforces compartmentalization by detecting, quarantining, and transferring UAP and RV imagery collection incidents before they are circulated within the military intelligence enterprise. Now that's a mouthful, but I want to break down my understanding of it. So it sounds like Immaculate Constellation is above all the other special access programs that are researching, looking into UFOs, possibly retrieving UFOs, etc. And because it sits at the top, anything that happens that is surrounding a UAP incursion. So say that there's a UFO that flies over a military base. Somebody's got to write that up. When they go to write that up, instead of it going to their next up and the next up like it normally would through the chain of command, it gets intercepted by Immaculate Constellation or by one of its child SAPs underneath it, special access programs, and then it siphons all that information and it hides its tracks so no one can follow it. And so instead of these reports making their way up the chain of command, they go over to this special access program, this parent USAP. It's not even just a special access, it's an unidentified special access program. So it's not on the books, it's Black Project. And so this is how they're able to keep the lid on the jar. All of these incursions over all of these bases, all of these pilots that are seeing these things flying through the sky and flying through the air, popping in from space, popping back out into space. Anytime these reports try to make their way up the chain of command, historically, instead of them going to where they should go, it sounds like they're making their way to Immaculate Constellation. At least that's what the whistleblower is claiming here. So, in conclusion, Immaculate Constellation shows that the USG is not only aware of UAPs and TUO, but also foreign state efforts to replicate UAP and TUO capabilities. So we're not the only ones reverse engineering. People like to say that this is an American thing. You know, why does it always only happen in America? That's probably because you speak English or something. Like if you speak all the languages of the world and you're able to look up their newspaper articles, you're going to find that it's talked about all the way around the globe. China, Brazil, Australia, America, the UK, France. This is happening around the world. And it's not just that they're seeing UAPs, according to this whistleblower. He's saying that there are other governments that have reverse engineering programs as well. And I mean, we've heard that as well, of course. We heard that the Nazis were creating their own UFO, you know, way back in the day. There's pictures of it. And I think, I mean, come on, why would they just randomly start trying to create a UFO from scratch? It's sounding more and more, if you want to believe the whistleblower, that that old school picture of that Nazi UFO that's been around forever that nobody really questions probably is an RV or an ARV, probably just RV, a reproduction vehicle from a crashed UFO. Whew, that's interesting. That's heavy. I love it. So where was I? Global, around the globe. It's probably this highlighted part. Where were we? Sorry about that. Immaculate Constellation also demonstrates the extant capability to detect, quarantine, and transfer UAP and RV collection incidents before they are observed and circulated within the military intelligence enterprise, partially explaining why many otherwise cleared members of the military and IC are unaware of UAP activities. Finally, the existence of he says finally a lot, like it's going to end, but then it doesn't end. So I don't know if he knows what that means. I don't know if he knows what that word means, but you know, we'll go ahead and let him get a couple more finallys. Finally, the existence of Immaculate Constellation provides verifiable evidence of the writing participation by elements of the U.S. Armed Services, Defense Civil Service, and the intelligence community in a global surveillance and reconnaissance mission tasked with monitoring UAPs and ARVs. Whew. Okay. Section 2. Oh, wow. Section 2. Uh-oh. It's moving around. USG Imagery Intelligence. The USG maintains imagery intelligence databases accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, leading to a fragmented ownership structure. This dispersion complicates the timely and comprehensive gathering of IMENT related to unidentified aerial phenomena. Control over access to these datasets primarily reside with the military intelligence enterprise, the combatant commands, the armed services, and individual program managers. The IMENT collected from datasets available to the DoD and reviewed for this report provide compelling evidence for UAP which defy prosaic explanations. There is a large number of I'm going to have to go to the next one at least to finish the thought. There are a large number of, that's the end of that page. All right, well, I guess we're going to, there are a high number of, that can't be the end. No, okay, here we go. Let me go back. Here we go. High number of unique imagery sensors available to the U.S. military and intelligence community, including infrared, IR, forward-looking infrared, FLIR, full motion video, thermal, and still photography. The multitude of wavelengths collected by these sensors have captured UAP characteristics that are difficult or impossible to observe with the human eye alone. Subtle atmospheric effects associated with UAPs are visible through the sensors employed by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies. I got to see that part again. Subtle atmospheric effects. Oh, yeah, got you. Associated with UAPs are visible through the sensors employed by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies, enabling unique analytic techniques. The verifiable chain of custody for UAP IMENT collected by U.S. military assets ensures a high level of confidence in the accuracy and integrity of the data gathered. The following examples are presented. So what he's saying there in a whole bunch of words, I tell you what, that's a whole lot of words. What he's saying is at this point, it's all the different sensors that the government has that are looking at the sky and that are capturing these UAP. It's not always the craft itself that you're able to see either with the naked eye or with a normal camera. But the government has honed in on different ways to detect small atmospheric changes that could be a high likelihood indicator that we've got a UAP in that area. So if we've got sensors that are looking at the sky all around the world, or at least over our military bases, then we can use infrared and FLIR cameras and different sensors to detect these small changes in the atmosphere, which will alert, apparently, Immaculate Constellation to a UAP being in the area. And if you monitor it, or if you send somebody out there to chase it, or maybe, which, Lou and a couple other people, including David Grush, I'm sorry, not Lou, David Grush did talk about how he helped to develop different ways of capturing UFOs. I believe I read somewhere that one of the ways that they tested whether it worked or not. I don't think they gave too much information. They definitely tried like shooting a net of sorts. It sounds wild, man, but it's cool stuff, man. These are official government agents and official people that are telling us this information. Typically, now this, on the other hand, the claim is that it's coming from somebody that either currently works for the government or previously worked for the government, but they're not clear on exactly who the person is. But an interesting thing that just keeps on popping into my head is something that I read on Reddit while I was watching the hearings, and there was like this big, I don't know what you call it, sub thread or something, and it was just all about the hearing. And one person read this document and said it sounds like Lou Elizondo ran Immaculate Constellation for the White House. So we know that Lou worked in the White House and did briefings to different presidents or to different advisors to presidents. And we know that Lou worked for the government, basically doing this, not reverse engineering, but studying UFOs, gathering people that could help in that investigation. So is it possible that he was part of Immaculate Constellation? And the reason I say it is because a lot of what's being said in the report so far reads almost like it's straight out of Lou's book. I shouldn't say straight out of Lou's book, but it seems like the missing chapter in Lou's book, I'd say. He also talks about how we use the FLIR and we use forward-looking infrared and infrared cameras and different sensors to detect and capture them on film, UFOs and UAPs. He also talks about the compartmentalization of the topic, and I'm not thinking of all of the small nuances that are reminding me of it, but it's just something that I read on Reddit, and for some reason it just keeps on coming back to my head. We don't know who the whistleblower is. Michael Shellenberger was asked very directly in a number of different ways during the hearing, which lasted about 2.5 hours, I think. They asked him, who is your source? He is going to protect his source, of course, because he's a good journalist, and that's what you should do. And anybody that says otherwise, I'd say that person doesn't understand, compassion, pride, bravery, because it took a lot of bravery for that whistleblower to come forward. And if then the journalist were to, expose his source, that could put that person in some serious danger. And they didn't come forward to get put into danger. They came forward to try to get this information out to the American public. So the idea that a journalist should just expose all their sources just to move the conversation forward, I don't believe in myself. I do think they should say maybe more, but I don't think that they should expose their sources. So he was asked directly, what government agency did your whistleblower work for? The Congress people asked him, was it the DOD, the Department of Defense? And Michael Shellenberger repeatedly said, I'm not going to tell you what department. They said, but it's such a large department, you're not giving away too much. And he said, I'm still not going to narrow the search on who my source is, because if I tell you what department he's in or whatever, right, then you're going to be able to find him. Like, you're going to at least know where not to look, so then you're going to focus in your search if you're trying to look for who the whistleblower is. And while the DOD might be really large, the folks that are read in on Immaculate Constellation, that sounds like it's a really small group of people. So, you know, if there's only, like, you know, for instance, as an example, if there's only 5 people in the program and one of them was the president or something, and one of them is a scientist, but one of them worked at the DOD, well, it's going to make it very easy for the group of 5 to determine which one of them is the whistleblower. So you can't give that kind of information if you want to actually continue to have whistleblowers coming forward and giving us more information. This is the only way that we're getting this information. Bob Lazar, whistleblower. This guy that gave us Immaculate Conception, whistleblower. But it's very important to separate the actual whistleblowers from people that would consider themselves to be patriots. Lou Elizondo is not a whistleblower. He has never said anything in public that he was not supposed to say. He always goes through the government and says, these are the things I plan on talking about. You know, these are the things that I worked on, and these are the things I'd like to tell the public about. And the government then goes through the DOPSR program, whatever they call it, and they will either determine that he can say what he's writing down, what he wants to say, or they'll take out pieces and say, you can't say that, but you can say this, you can say this, but you can't say that. And in his case, he is allowed to talk about everything that he has been telling us about. I think the government's kind of like, hey, if people believe him, they believe him. If they don't believe him, they don't believe him. But the government said, you cannot talk about reverse engineering. That is the one thing you cannot talk about. And it was really interesting. During the hearing today, we had Michael Shellenberger sitting right next to Lou Elizondo. And when Michael Shellenberger was asked questions about Immaculate Constellation, you could see the discomfort in Lou, because Lou does not go against the government. The government says you can't talk about reverse engineering programs, and he will not talk about it. He will repeat the words if somebody asks him, is there a reverse engineering program? He'll say, I'm not allowed to talk about reverse engineering. And that's all he'll say. At the hearing, when pressed by Congresswoman Nancy Mace, for the first time that I've seen, I guess, maybe it's the first time it's ever been said officially, that's for sure. Nancy Mace very directly said, okay, fine, you don't want to talk about it, you're not allowed to talk about it. Is the government involved, the U.S. government involved in a reverse engineering program? And Lou Elizondo said yes. He also went on to say, though, that it was kind of bizarre. He said, I just want to say for the record that I've never read Michael Shellenberger's report. I've never read about this Immaculate Constellation through his reporting. And he was about to say, and I deliberately am not going to read it. And then he kind of got cut off from Nancy Mace, because he wasn't really answering the question at the time. She was asking about something else, but he was just like, hey, listen, don't tie me to anybody that's talking about reverse engineering, because I'm not allowed to. I signed a paper. The government 3 years ago laid a paper in front of me and said, this is what you're allowed to talk about, and this is what you're not allowed to talk about. And now that I think about it, I guess it could be possible that the event that got him into that skiff, where he was asked by the government to sign a document saying he's not going to talk about reverse engineering, that could have been part of the DOPSR process, right? So if he has to submit his book to the DOPSR process, which is the government, they go through it to see what he can and cannot say. And at the end of that, it would seem pretty likely and logical that they're going to call him in to a skiff and say, okay, we did the DOPSR, and this is what you can say, this is what you can't say, and I need you to sign on paper that you're not going to go outside of these parameters. That actually is very likely. Well, I shouldn't say very likely because I'm gonna have to go back in and research the dates because he said 3 years ago. That would put us in 2021. I believe he wrote his book after that. I think he wrote his book after that. Then it was in Dopser for 1 year. So that would actually take us to about 2022. So maybe it was before he went out and started talking. He might have gone through the Dopser process a couple of times. The very first time, he might have gone through it when he was deciding to join Into the Stars, which is Tom DeLonge's cool project where they're trying to coax disclosure out of the government, but they're also working with the government to make that happen. And I'm actually in the middle of one of his books right now. I'd recommend reading his fiction books. The nonfiction ones, where he's just kind of like going on a diatribe about the phenomenon, is pretty cool, but it's a little bit too dry for me. And like, I kind of like those kind of books, but for whatever reason, his the words that he chooses to use and the way that he writes with his writing partner, the nonfiction, not very fun, but the fiction, holy cow! I mean, it's fantastic. Speaking of which, the book that I'm actually reading right now, because I really do want to recommend it. I've been loving it. It's called Chasing Shadows. It's the first of a series that's part of his Secret Machines moniker. Secret Machines are RVs. They are reverse engineered UFOs that our government deploys, that our government uses. They don't tend to use it for combat per se. They tend to use it for really top secret and top sensitive information gathering is what the book so far is talking about. And it does kind of track because, of course, we've seen a couple of wars go down and we haven't seen the U.S. cavalry show up in UFOs yet, have we? No. Well, we haven't seen it publicly anyways. So very interesting stuff. Michael Shellenberger, hats off to you. Immaculate Constellation it's amazing that we actually got the name, right? And it's all alleged at this point, but I'm hoping that Congress looks into it and is able to confirm or, deny or, get to the bottom of it, because I want to know. I want to see them aliens, and I know some of y'all do too. Again, don't know if anybody else cares, but I care about it, so I figured, why not talk about it? Hope you guys have a good one, and stay cool. And remember, being kind to yourself is being kind to others. That's wrong. Being kind to others is being kind to yourself.